important thing. As you're doing the set of sketches, I want you to think of this as a body of work, as these are 3 pieces that go together in a set, right? So we're going to have 3 separate designs that are your designs that work cohesively as a set that show us asymmetry, symmetry, and radial compositions, and that illustrate positive and negative space, contrast and elaboration, and rhythm and repetition. So at the very end, you can see I'm pretty serious about the no grayscale, right? At the very end, so the first week or so of this project, we will work just on illustrating those designs, all right? And then you will then paste those designs onto their own layers and incorporate the definition in order to create an informative and aesthetically pleasing piece of design work in black and white only. So here are some student examples. I'd like to start out with this. So one of the things that's going to be very important as we move through this, even if you already know Illustrator, what we are going to get those of you who know Illustrator to do is to work in Illustrator in a very competent, unsloppy way so that the things that you're building aren't overly cumbersome, but just beautiful and easy to edit, all right? Here's a great example of looking at an InDesign piece in outline mode when it's built right. You'll notice that nothing falls outside of that 3x3 square. Even where there aren't lines on the left around those items fill that space. So this is it once it has color attached to it. So the artist decided that they did need linear elements left and right to really balance it within the composition, but they didn't really need them on the outside, top and bottom, right? So we have radial on the left, kind of started getting its symmetry in the middle, but not quite there, right? And then asymmetrical on the right. But I keep this in here, and one of the reasons is it's a great example of the cleanness of typography, which we'll talk about later, because the second step at about week 2, we will look at how do we select typography, how do we use hierarchy of type, how do we use the choice of typeface to best accentuate our artwork, as well as how do we make choices that give the viewer the best chance of reading and understanding what we're trying to show them. That's the informative piece. So some other examples. Those of you who are like, oh my God, this is crazy. What is going on here? I can't believe I took this course. You can do something as simple as this. Just using circles, you can illustrate what's going on, right? You don't have to make it hugely complex. And when you're doing thumbnails, if your circles aren't perfect, that's okay, right? Thumbnails are just a suggestion of what we're trying to get at. In this case, the person kind of worked through circles, squares, bringing it all together and adding little triangles, right? So they kind of told a story visually from left to right. This piece, I love to show people because this student was a horticulture student. And Anne took my class, and this was her first assignment. It's gorgeous, right? And she went on to get a graphic design degree because she found that she really loved what she was doing. She does one thing that we'll talk about later that's terrible, but I keep it in here because I forgave her for it. But those little words at the end of each of the definitions, those are called orphans, and we don't allow that, right? No child will be left dangling in this classroom, and those little individual words are dangles. But she's got hierarchy, she's chosen a typeface that accentuates her designs. Some of you are going to get a little bit more creative. I'm going to give you a base layout. So if you just drop everything in and do your type, you'll have a grid structure that I give you to work with, and you can work that way. Some people want to push it a little bit further and do something different, and that's totally fine, as long as you have a balanced composition and you include all of the information. Here's a set that uses a bit more of a thematic approach. Again, I do not know why those are turning out gray down there. That whole field in the bottom is actually black, so you don't see any of those circles. It does tell me that when this person rendered it, they just threw a bunch of circles on there, and now it's reading that way. But this is a great example of using sort of an underlying other concept, right? The idea of space, right? Space is used in each of these compositions. The artist is showing us a sense of space in order to make it a cohesive set. Another example. Another example here. Another example here. So at the end, you will submit a printed copy, which will include your 3 designs along with the accompanying principle and its definition. And you must also include, in an aesthetically pleasing way, your name, Art 115, and Fall 2019. So if we look back here, if you can see it in the bottom, Jennifer did it really understated as a footer, Art 115, Jennifer Williams, Fall 2016. Cameron Nagler, Fall 2016, Art 115. The other thing I will ask you to do is to pick your strongest design and render it in color, right? So once we flush this out, we put together our layout, we're going to take one design and we're going to render it in color. When you walk into the space every day, you see something that says create up on the wall. That's all from this project in this class last semester. So the students all did their best designs. We pulled them together to make that installation piece, and Amy printed the letters to say create. And if you notice the one in the middle, that's Fran's. If any of you who knew Fran, he was a lab tech last semester. That's Fran's, and he was like super like, I can't believe you didn't put a letter on mine. I'm like, Fran, yours makes the most beautiful A. We don't even need anything else. It just creates an A. So take a look at that if you haven't noticed it before. You'll also be expected to turn in a project folder. I will walk you through this process. So starting next class, we'll talk about working on a Mac. We'll talk about naming files and file organization and folder organization. I will give you a roadmap of what a strong file and project folder looks like, and you'll turn in the work in that way.